Bill Tilford joins us today to discuss disputed elections in Indiana.
We'll also talk about shortwave radio, Voice of America, and more today on The Undercurrent. Greetings.
Hello. Good to see you, Uncle Warren.
Good to see you too. Already got a question off the bat from Chuck. What's up, Chuck? Got a CBC voter in the house too. Will any of the election stuff fix their absolutely slow and awful response to the power outages from the storms? Yeah, Gary, Indiana had been out of power for about a week over there now.
I've been hearing about this. I got to tell you, and I don't know, I think things are doing okay up in Chicago. We've been having this horrible heat wave down here, and it's dry. I mean, I took a picture. I'll put it up on Facebook or Instagram later on. But last night I was walking around late at night, 11 o'clock at night, and I'm soaking wet, but had to get my steps in. I'm looking up at the trees, and they're brown. And I'm looking, there's brown leaves all over the ground. It looks like October.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
You got that heat dome.
And there's another
one.
Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah, those heat domes are terrible. They just trap that heat in like that. And I remember when I lived down south, those things were just awful. And we didn't have air conditioning either. I had a box fan, and I would just lay there and let the box fan blow on me till I finally got cool, and then I could put like a sheet on or something like that. But you know, if we would have had air conditioning back then, that bill would have been.
I tell you, it's crazy. I mean, mine jumped $75 from June to July. I don't even want to think what it's going to be. What it's going to be. My next bill is going to be. And I actually prefer a box fan. I would prefer to have the windows open and have box fans because they're just a lot more pleasant. I like the fresh air, but at some point you have to make a decision.
I tell you, I converted from a box fan to one of these small round fans that you ever heard of the Vornado, that they basically concentrates like this tube of cool air on you. And it's like really nice. I had those in New York, and I didn't have air conditioning in that apartment either. And it just totally directs cool air on you. They had the Target has the Honeywell, the off-brand of those things, but those things is about as much as you pay for a box fan. And it just really, I kind of mostly use it to circulate air in the room here, and it does a fantastic job. I used to love those box fans, but it just seems like even if you put it on high, it kind of spreads it out
right
like that, whereas it's more, but these little small round ones, they just
I'll have to check those out.
I know I get a little chilly with those things sometimes too. It's
well, nice. As you said, they're fantastic.
They are fantastic. Indeed, yes. So I'm looking at one right now. Hey, baby. No. But yeah, so the first one I ever got one of those, I'm like, this ain't gonna do that. And I was like, holy crap. This is like a tornado. But it's really good. So hopefully everybody else around the country and around the world is staying cool. We'll talk about European temperatures later in the show. But speaking of weather, let's get to the riptide. And Hawaii over the weekend got pummeled by a tropical storm. Well, it was a hurricane, I think. Now by the time it got to Hawaii, it was a tropical storm. So now today Honolulu resumes normal operations after tropical storm Lala. So this is like the rainfall that they got. So green is like up to 2 inches, and then white is around 30 inches. Look at the big island here. Yeah, they got pummeled. The city and county of Honolulu will resume normal government operations. This follows Monday's closure of non-essential offices and services in the aftermath of Tropical Storm Lala. Mayor Rick Blangiardi decided to reopen city offices and resume services on Tuesday as conditions across Oahu continue to improve, and significant progress is being made on recovery and restoration efforts. And just a small thing here. The only reason I know any of the pronunciations of the Hawaiian Islands is my years of watching Hawaii 5-0 reruns. So I know how to say the Big Island. That's easy. Our first responders, emergency personnel, city crews, utility workers, and so many others have done an extraordinary job responding to the storm and beginning the recovery. So let's get to, I guess, down here, some of the images here. This is, I mean, the trees were uprooted. It was a hurricane when it hit. Although I don't really know how to say that one. Kau? Is that how you say it?
I don't know. I didn't really watch Hawaii 5. I mean, we saw it sometimes at my grandparents' house, but
how dare you?
Yeah.
You terrible person. So yeah, so they have oh, you can go away now. So yeah, they sustained a lot of rain. I think one person was killed throughout the incident, throughout the whole thing. But other than that, just a lot of rain and whatnot. And it just seems like it's not just the ring of fire around the Pacific with the earthquakes, although we'll get to the one in Indonesia here in just a moment. But a lot of this weather is just getting crazier and crazier, not just here in the United States, but seems like around the world.
It really is, and it's really concerning. Yesterday, for example, we had some relief on Monday. There was, it actually got cooler out, and it was okay. But then yesterday, right back to being blazing hot. And I walk a lot. I mean, I try to hit at least 10,000 steps a day, sometimes go up to 15, even 20,000 steps a day. But at some point, it's just not sensible to do that. And I took an Uber for a trip, a walk that would have, would have taken with no problem. And I'm talking to the driver, and he said, "I've never seen anything like this down here." It's just, and I remember last year, yes, it was hot, but for example, we had some humidity. In fact, it got so humid at one point, I bought a dress from Amazon, hung it up, and all the wrinkles were out by the next day. But that's not happening this year. It's just dry. It's relentless dry heat. And I'm hearing stuff about reservoirs and other places going dry. It's happening. Yeah. So here it is. And I have no idea what to expect this winter.
Well, northern Arkansas, and I know northern Mississippi too, when I lived there too. Not so much the snowstorms, but they were frequent with the ice storms.
Yeah.
And when I lived there in the 90s, the ice storms were kind of like once every few years kind of thing. But now it seems like it's almost like a every year occurrence. So
yeah, and again, we're going to talk about what's going on in Europe, but it seems to be happening everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, people say, oh, some people will deny there's climate change because they don't want to admit that maybe humans are accelerating it. But I think it's a combination of both. It's like you have natural Earth changes, but you also have human interdiction that kind of accelerates some of the heating process when you're pumping more. You've been pumping CO2 into the atmosphere for well over 100 years. It's going to make a difference. And people can deny that as much as they want, but that's just science. That's how that works. So, yeah, and the South getting it like that is yeah. I remember a few times it getting pretty hot down there, but then once the humidity kicked up, it was just that's why I could never live in a jungle. too many
Yeah.
snakes and bugs for one thing. And that humidity, I would just be like, why even take a shower? You're just, you're soaked every day from it.
Again, I said, like last night, I left the house at about 9:30 just because I had to get my exercise. And I came back after about 11 o'clock or so, a little bit after that. And I was just, I wasn't running. I was just walking all over the place.
Yeah.
And I come back and I am soaking wet.
Yeah.
It was just, and it's relatively dry out there. It's so hot during the day. It's getting, we're getting 100-degree temperatures with, the feels like 107, something like that. It's absolutely brutal.
Yeah. This is the old adage, like, why even bother taking a shower? Because as soon
Yeah.
as you get out of the shower, you're just going to be soaked again. So,
Mm.
well, we were talking about earthquakes too just a second
Mhm.
ago. It's Indonesia dealing with a quake there. So a doctor in the earthquake struck Indonesia area pleads for support as the number of injured and displaced rises. So as the scale of Saturday's deadly earthquake in eastern Indonesia emerged, a post on social media went viral. I am physically unable to handle this many patients alone, wrote Dr. Melinda Bella, a young doctor in East Manggarai, a Regency Island of Flores. Please help, she said, ending her message with emojis of tears and prayer hands. For 36 hours after the earthquake struck, Dr. Melinda was the only doctor working in the village of Dampek, one of the areas hit hardest by the disaster. The powerful magnitude 7.7 quake struck north of Flores on Saturday, inflicting enormous damage across Indonesia's East Nusa Tenggara province. At least 70 people have been killed and nearly 1,200 injured. Dampek is in East Manggarai, where Dr. Melinda worked around the clock to help the many injured. When the ABC sought out the young doctor, she was busily working in a makeshift hospital, which had been set up after the main health facility was damaged in the earthquake. A dozen people were lined up on stretchers with IV bags tethered from a tarpaulin roof. Dr. Melinda was working with nurses to check vital signs and treat injuries while more patients were rolling in. She said for the first 36 hours after the earthquake, she did not receive any support. With no sleep and little to eat or drink, she treated the scores of injured people in her community. So many patients come in at once, I had to handle it alone. So her story has highlighted the painstaking recovery efforts underway in Indonesia, where many remote villages have become difficult to access because of damaged roads and landslides. More than 40,000 people have been displaced from their homes, and nearly 12,000 houses have been damaged. That's according to Indonesia's disaster management agency. Many homes, including near the makeshift clinic, lie in ruins, reduced to piles of rubble. Families have set up temporary shelters and are sleeping under tarps, largely exposed to the harsh Indonesian heat. Yeah, talk about heat and humidity there too. Even if their homes mostly survived the initial quake, many have been sleeping outside, fearful of aftershocks that could bring rubble down on top of them. As of Monday night, many residents in the island's Manggarai Regency, one of the areas most affected by the earthquake, were still living in those shelters. And Indonesia is not, they, of course, what was it, 2010? The big earthquake that caused all those tsunamis.
Oh, yeah.
In that area, which actually made the world think about how we treat tsunamis and early warning systems for those things. Because before then, there really wasn't much of an early warning system for tsunamis. Or was it 2005? I'm always confusing that one with the one in Japan. I think the one in Japan that was 2010 or 2011, I think, something like that. But yeah, that's the thing. I don't think there were any tsunamis affecting people in this. At least I didn't see any in the reporting. But, like we say, it seems like it's the earthquake of the week.
Yeah.
Every time we report on these things.
And wildfires have become like mass shootings in this country. It used to be if there was a wildfire, you'd hear about it. It used to be if there was a mass shooting, you'd hear about it. Now, yeah.
Yeah, it's an every year thing too, especially
Yeah.
out in California, in Canada too. They've been dealing with that every year as well. So these these things are getting more and more on the regular. Yeah, and you, as you say, that there's so many now that people just stop reporting them so much, but you know they're still there. And I mean, I'm pretty sure the people in those areas want to know about those things, but you think you talk about the ring of fire around the Pacific there, and we always say that California and the whole West Coast is on that thing too.
Mm-hmm.
And if the quote unquote big one ever hits there, you know, it could be like that movie 2012 where just California just kind of goes, well, we'll see you later.
Yep.
We're gonna do
Bye
our own
bye.
thing. Yeah, we'll be out here, or California Island out here, you know.
I'm hearing like the theme from Gilligan's Island
Yeah.
in the
What
back there.
was it? Escape from L.A. was basically he was in L.A., but it was on its own island. An earthquake had I don't know. Not as good as the original. It's Escape from New York, but
That was a good film.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the Duke of New York. Oh wait, he said no. Who's it? Donald Pleasance? He's up against the wall and he says, "You're the Duke of New York, number one." Speaking of California, Meta in court once again, doing their best Trump impression of being in court all the time. States take Meta to trial in California in the biggest fight yet over social media harms to children. So of the thousands of lawsuits Meta faces, you know, when your company faces thousands of lawsuits, you're screwing up something big time. So the thousands of lawsuits Meta faces over child safety on its platforms, none may be more consequential than the one going to trial this week in California. States are seeking extensive financial damages that could, in theory, total as much as 1.4 trillion TRILLION dollars, plus changes to how the company operates Facebook and Instagram. The lawsuit accuses the social media giant of contributing to the youth mental health crisis by knowingly and deliberately designing features that get children addicted to its platforms. It also claims that Meta routinely collects data on children under 13 without their parents' consent, in violation of federal law. Meta has harnessed powerful and unprecedented technologies to entice, engage, and ultimately ensnare youth and teens. Its motive is profit, and in seeking to maximize its financial gains. The lawsuit says dozens of states filed the lawsuit 3 years ago. The trial set to begin yesterday in federal court in Oakland, California, features 4 of the states as plaintiffs: California, Colorado, Kentucky, and New Jersey. The other 25 states are expected to have trials later. Meta said it disputes the allegations, and the trial evidence will show its commitment to supporting young people. We've listened to parents, worked with experts and law enforcement, and conducted in-depth research to understand the issues that matter most, the company said in a statement. For Meta, which already lost 2 pivotal cases over harms to children and teens this year, the stakes are high. The company reported a rare profit decline last month, in part due to $2.4 billion in legal expenses. The $1.4 trillion figure, which Meta disclosed in a legal filing, is almost as high as the Menlo Park, California company's entire market capitalization. That is the value of all its outstanding shares on the stock market. Paying it would inevitably put Meta Platforms in bankruptcy and perhaps put the company under state ownership. The state attorneys general are going for the gusto, said Eric Goldman, a professor and co-director of the High-Tech Law Institute at Santa Clara University School of Law. They're trying to set the definitive precedent in this case, and they have asked for extraordinary damages, and they are going to seek extraordinary structural remedies if they succeed. So $1.4 trillion. Now not B. They ain't screwing around this time. That and for Meta to become like basically, I guess taken over by the state. That would be something. Yeah, that would be very unprecedented. And if that actually happens, watch out, other corporations too that might, especially when you're harming children like that.
Yeah, it really is. I've been following this on NPR. I listen to NPR in the mornings. And it's an interesting case because they're basically trying to say that the entire format of these social media platforms is designed to hook somebody, get them in, and keep them scrolling. Doom scrolling, as they call it, or however you want to define it. And I think they have something of an uphill battle because people used to say that about television. That they were hooking kids on television. They got addicted to screens and that sort of thing. That never really went anywhere. I mean, there's a lot of restrictions on children's television, but now, of course, TV, old-fashioned TV is passé. So I don't know that they're going to be able to make this case. I think that their concerns are real. I think I would probably be suggesting that the data collection is a more serious and more easier to prove. My guess is than proving that these companies are deliberately addicting children to social media platforms. And I think that, the response, the defense would be, well, isn't that the parents' job? Why are parents giving children access to these devices? Why are they not supervising this? We have special accounts for this. But the data collection thing seems to me to be a more solid route to going after Meta.
Yeah, I don't know about the 1.4 trillion. I think it's kind of like in negotiations, you shoot high and aim, hopefully
it's a big number.
Get it into the middle. Yeah, and the number of states that are involved in this too. I mean, this is something that Meta just can't sweep under the rug. And say, well, say like, well, parents, it's like, well, I think the difference now between what happened with TV back then is like kids didn't carry a TV in their pocket everywhere they went. And, so there's so much easier instant access to this stuff. And, yes, the parents do have, a responsibility to make sure their kids aren't doing this stuff. But at the same time, that doesn't mean, that Meta can just do whatever to make these kids addicted to it. Right. So,
but at
a
the
lot
same
of
time,
blame to go around.
Oh yeah. And I don't know what I think about the state taking over social media platforms. I don't find that terribly reassuring.
Well, not California anyway.
Yeah,
see
but
who's in charge there.
But any state. I mean, the idea of a state social media platform gives me the willies, and not Mr. Willie Bragg. I'm not talking about him there, but it gives me the willies. The idea of the state now they're collecting the data. Now they're determining the algorithm and what you get shown.
To see like these corporations in bed with governments anyway nowadays, it's almost like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. If the states take over, they're probably just going to be as bad as or worse than these private companies that are doing this too. Fun fact, speaking of online stuff, this is kind of an aside. I didn't mention this. So, I've been putting our clips on a lot of platforms.
Yeah, you have.
From this show and my other shows too. I had one particular clip where it wasn't an opinion or anything like that. It was an actual news story talking about Israel and how they had over 370 Palestinian children in jail. Right. So I posted that this morning, and on TikTok, TikTok took that video down, said it went against community standards. And I'm like, how does this go against community standards? Right. So when you talk about these companies and they're sometimes, yes, they don't do enough, and sometimes they go overboard when it comes to trying to protect, because it had nothing to do with harming children. Like from my standpoint, it
Right.
was it was basically a news story that told facts that other outlets had been doing, and to see TikTok take that down, especially in recent months when they changed hands, and things seemed to be a little more sensitive towards a particular country in the Middle East. It seems like the community standard is let's not tell the truth about this kind of stuff. Just post puppy and kitten videos and shut the hell up, that kind of thing. So, but so far hadn't been taken down on any of the other ones. So
I'm loving the clips, by the way, and Uncle Warren also tags me in our other socials on there, and that's great because what I can do is, of course, they go up on my social and on the Undercurrent. I've also, if you want to follow those socials, I just put in the links our link tree where you can follow us there. The cool thing also is that I can take those clips, Uncle Warren, very easily. And on Instagram, when you upload to stories, you can actually link to an outside link. So I link them directly to our YouTube show from the clips, so people can, they see it in their stories, they can click on that and they can find our show on YouTube. So just as an aside, I appreciate that, but I think it's great content. And if you don't always have time to watch the whole show, you can tune in and check that out. In fact, I was watching Marcus's show, our friend Marcus Cage, Political Matrix, and Kate was in the chat, and she was saying that she had just been watching our clip about the demise of Sears.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of people on Facebook were watching that too.
Yeah, so it's really kind of cool to see what's happening with the clips. Again, we don't always have time to watch a whole show, and I know that we tend to pack them in here, but it's a great way to catch up on stuff. And then if you want to see more, you can always go to the original video.
Yeah, and that's what I started doing when I started uploading these clips. So we upload these vertical clips to YouTube and Rumble, and that's been on the regular anyway, or at least on YouTube. Then I started doing it on Rumble, on Facebook now, and also on TikTok and Instagram. I'll also put in like the link to the particular show, and then there's also a link on there if you want to actually subscribe to the YouTube channel. I always point them back to the YouTube channel for subscribing. And if you're new and you're watching this, subscribe. Don't be one of those people that doesn't do that and gets left out of all the fun. So yeah, but I just found that to be because that wasn't the first one that they've taken down. They took down another one of mine. It had nothing to do with any kind of community standards. So I always say, word to the wise, when you're posting on TikTok, it's a new regime that's running it. So if you're going to put something that's a little spicy when it comes to the facts and stuff that certain people may not like, just be aware that they're banning that kind of stuff. So I'm not a particular fan of TikTok anyway. I don't really get on there that much, but it's a nice outlet to, for the normies to get our stuff,
Yeah, no, actually, funnily enough, I actually like to buy stuff off of TikTok. I know it sounds crazy, but what it's really good for, if you're looking for new and different products, a lot of the creators, they're affiliates and whatnot, and they do demos showing you how to use them, or they explain, and you can also often get some really good deals. So I've got a few things that actually have brands that I've absolutely fallen in love with TikTok. So I guess I use I don't watch television, but if I want to look for, become a good consumer, I go on TikTok to find new stuff.
Oh, there you go. Let's get back to the fun stuff here. They're trumping this wall. He's been the border wall. He's been doing this since his first administration. And now he's run into some real problems here in Texas, I believe. So Trump's administration briefly pauses contentious border project in Texas's Big Bend National Park. Not Big Ben like the clock in England. That's Big Ben. This is Big Bend. The Trump administration said Monday it's temporarily pausing construction of a contentious border construction project in Texas's Big Bend National Park, while the head of the agency tasked with building the wall visits to do an on-the-ground evaluation. The project through the national park in southern Texas has faced fierce bipartisan opposition by critics who say it's marring the area's pristine environment. They argue the region's rugged and remote terrain already serves as a deterrent to migrants and smugglers. Border crossings in the area have historically been lower than other regions and have dropped even further over the past 2 years. CBP is pausing all construction activity in Big Bend National Park while I visit and conduct a personal on-the-ground evaluation, according to Rodney Scott, who heads Customs and Border Protection. He said that on the tweeters. Scott said over the next couple of days he was going to listen to local leadership, community members, and stakeholders to address what he said were real national security threats while protecting the park. Customs and Border Protection did not respond to questions about how long the construction was paused or give any details on whom Scott would be meeting with in Texas. While it isn't clear whether the brief suspension portended a more permanent halt to the construction in the area, it reflected the intensity of the bipartisan opposition and was a rare concession from the administration on a signature promise of the president that it had raced to complete. Congress gave the Trump administration $46 billion last summer to build a wall from the Pacific Ocean to the Gulf of Mexico, and the administration has been charging ahead and waiving numerous regulations in an effort to swiftly build the wall. Yes, when you bypass those regulations, what could possibly go wrong?
He's been fixated on that wall.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, the wall, immigration, it just seems like
the ballroom, the reflecting pond.
Well, I mean, sticking with immigration, it just seems like he's kind of obsessed with it, and it's just, whenever somebody's obsessed with a particular subject like that normally doesn't warrant that kind of attention, you have to wonder if there's maybe something else is going on at the same time. Maybe there's other parties that want this to happen more so than the public, right? So and to say, and where Big Bend is, I'd read this before. It's pretty rugged. You don't need a wall there. Nobody's going to be climbing over those mountains and craziness to get into America when they could just go east and or west where it's a little flatter. It just seems like more punishment, destroying. It's just not this one. It's all these other national parks that they want to drill for oil in, and it just seems like this is if you're familiar with the Dune series, you had Baron Harkonnen, and this planet was just black and industrialized to the point where it's just there were no natural resources. They were just manufacturing everything, and it seems like that's what they want to turn this planet into.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I misunderstood you before. I apologize for that. But yes, the obsession with immigration, border walls, building border walls in areas where it makes no sense to do that. It does. I do wonder who is hissing in his ear. I also wonder if this is just something that he's fixated on. Sometimes people get fixated on an issue and they won't let it go.
Yeah.
And
I mean, well, go ahead.
This is just part of his psyche that he just, for some reason, and I have no idea why, he has no problem marrying immigrants. So it's just, I don't know. It's a very interesting thing, and maybe in future generations, psychologists will, probe that a little bit.
Maybe, and maybe there may be something to the whole national parks things too. I mean, there may be, yeah, he wants to build a wall through there, but maybe there are natural resources in there too that they'll say, while we're building this wall here, oh, look at all this stuff we can dig up and use, that sort of thing. So I mean, it's always a follow the money kind of situation. In this case, it's like follow the greed, right? Maybe more attention should be paid to that area to see what else lies beneath, the earth there that might be valuable resources too, and just using the wall as a guise to say, yeah, we definitely need a wall through this impenetrable forest through here and mountainous area. It would be like, saying, let's put a wall in front of Mount Everest, the Himalayas, because those mountains, they're just some of those crazy kids will manage to climb over those mountains. You know how that goes.
It could also just be that he likes to destroy things.
Yeah, that could be.
I think, wasn't he talking about putting himself on Mount Rushmore, which was already a defacement of a sacred native site, but and then putting his name on the Kennedy Center. And
that's coming back. His name's going back up there. Did you hear? I
heard about that. It's like,
yeah.
Why?
It's ego. I mean,
I know. Yeah.
His name was taken down. That pissed him off. So I think he went to court over it, and they decided that they're going to put it back up. And I'm like, okay.
And the Kennedy Center is now a shell of its former self. I mean, they've had people walk away. People don't want to be there. I guess one of the things, I didn't know this, but the Kennedy Center had a policy of having programming, in fact, free programming, 365 days a year. There was always a free program. And because they want it to be open to the public, and they want people to be able to access the arts. And I'm sure it was top-notch stuff that they were doing, the productions that they were doing there. And just hearing about what's happened to the Kennedy Center, I've learned more about the Kennedy Center in the past few months than I ever knew before. But it's really very sad for the people in that area. It's not just everybody getting nationally, people getting mad at Trump. There are people in the area who had access to arts programming who may not have it anymore.
Well, we can't have arts apparently, unless it makes money for somebody. So, I think that's probably what it may be, part of that conversation too. A lot of institutions have really deteriorated in recent years too because of that stuff. So, now it is time. We have Bill down here. Apparently he's sitting in a hole after he broke into somebody's house. He keeps breaking into that same house. Let's bring in Bill Tilford here for the catch of the day. Hello, Bill. How are you, sir?
Greetings from an undisclosed location.
No, it's disclosed. You keep breaking into the same house. Those people are going to catch you eventually.
Before we get to why you think I'm here, I'd like to share a couple things about some of your other segments.
Sure.
Beginning with the weather climate. I happen to live in central Indiana, and yesterday I got a brand new roof, courtesy a really bad storm that brought down my neighbor's tree upon it about a month ago. And in Eaton, we are having flooding that is at record levels last reported in 1913.
Wow. Yeah.
And in fact may very well break those. So we're affected as well, just a little differently. And as regards Laney's comment a moment ago about the Kennedy Center, as a matter of fact, the Millennium Stage was not merely a 365 set of performances which locals could attend. That also streamed, and as Ron Popeil used to say, wait, there's more. This was a key venue when international acts came in from places including Cuba, that while they were playing at the Millennium Stage was also live streamed for free. So it wasn't merely entertaining the locals. We could watch it from here, and I often did. So the loss goes far beyond what a lot of people associate with the Kennedy Center, which is a sort of elite top hat type of venue. If you were coming in as an international act, this is where you could reach the whole country basically for free, including a lot of live bodies, but also via their website.
All right, that's a lot. It's an even deeper loss.
Yeah. You know, you're in Indiana. Have you heard anything about what's going on up in Gary? I know they've been without power for over a week now. Do you have you heard any like updates up there? Or?
I've been so deep in our own travails here. I confess I haven't had my eye on that, but I'm not shocked to hear that. Here, the power outages were relatively short, but my mother's landline was out for about 3 weeks.
Oof. Yeah, there's still people with landlines out there too. And
Yeah.
you know, a lot of people with cell phones, especially younger people, don't understand that. Yeah, you know, landlines are still a thing. I know people that still have landlines too.
Well, my mother's in her 90s, and we tried a cell phone with her briefly. It was a fascinating
yeah, she was like, no dice.
Unsuccessful adventure.
Yeah. A lot of folks like who are up in age like that are just like, you know what, the wall phone is fine. The phone, do. That's all I need. I don't need to see pictures of puppies and kittens. I just want to call somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead.
So where would you like to go next?
Well, let's start with this Indiana. Uncle Bill's been on a few times, and we've been talking about this disputed election in Indiana. What is it? 23rd district? It's the state senate?
Yes, and to set the table for that just a little bit, I'd like to add a couple of fun factoids.
Sure.
It's an area that punches above its weight in political history. Brian Lamb, who founded C-SPAN, came out of Purdue, which is in that district.
Okay.
And on the flip side, the larger U.S. congressional district was back in the 70s home of Earl Landgrebe, who famously was not only Nixon's last holdout supporter, but told reporters not to confuse him with the facts. And at the moment, the incumbent, Spencer Deary, has a district that includes geography like Purdue, but also that part of rural Indiana that is still my country right or wrong, my president right or wrong. And Deary committed the horrible sin from MAGA's point of view of voting against redistricting.
Okay.
He was one of several Republican senators who did, and everyone was targeted by Neo-Caligula. Originally, Deary squeaked out a very narrow victory, about 6 votes. His opponent, Trump-backed Copenhagen, had her attorneys throw the kitchen sink at it. Most of the allegations were thrown out. In relative fairness to her attorneys, outrageous allegations are nothing new in litigation, but they used the whole playbook, most of which got thrown out. Ultimately, though, very recently, the Recount Commission, which is a 3-person panel that is stacked with 2 Republicans, voted 2-1 to hand it over to Copenhagen on the basis of several votes were not signed and stamped by the clerks. And oddly enough, these are not absentee ballots. These were live ballots. People showed up with their ID. And The only problem was the signature and stamp was not on it. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Technically, Indiana code requires that those marks be on a ballot for them to be valid. However, the same Indiana code also says that ballots that have been properly cast by the voter cannot be invalidated by clerical error. I'm paraphrasing here, but this is the gist of it. Cannot be invalidated by clerical error unless there was evidence of fraud or tampering or other misdoings. So at the moment, Copenhagen is sitting with an equally razor-thin 6 votes, I believe, victory. And as I speak, what's happening right at the moment, and fans of drama are going to love this, technically there's supposed to be, again, according to Indiana code, a final certification of the ballots on the 21st, which is coming up pretty quick, Friday. The Supreme Court accepted, and this is where the news is getting a little fuzzy. The Supreme Court accepted the Deary camp's motion to consider whether to take the case. And what it did, now that's not the same thing as scheduling it on their docket. The Copenhagen camp has until Friday to file their arguments regarding why the court shouldn't take it. And the Deary camp has until Monday, which is past the technical deadline, to file their brief on why the Supreme Court should take it. So where we sit right now, the Supreme Court maybe or maybe not will take the case. The Supreme Court, like most of the rest of Indiana state government, currently swings red. So it may be a bit of a long shot, but the crux of the biscuit, as Frank Zappa would say, is that the Deary camp is arguing that the code clearly states that voter intent should be honored unless skullduggery was in play. And the Copenhagen camp is arguing rules as rules, but we like this set of rules better than that set of rules.
You know, it was a while back you were on, we were updating us about this case, and you mentioned, I think it was Copenhagen, who wanted to actually bring voters in to give an accounting of their votes.
That, fortunately, was one of the many demands they made that were thrown out along the way.
Okay, because that was scaring us all.
But here's where I have to add a caveat. At the time, that was thrown out, but since we're now down to the question of voter intent, I would not at all be shocked if their filings on Friday try to resurrect that issue. MAGA's infamous for that.
Yeah.
And they may try to argue that, well, okay, voter intent, but was voter intent that they legitimately wanted to vote Republican, or was voter intent that they wanted to mess with the system by crossing over? Now, I would hope that a sane, rational Supreme Court would throw that out. But again, we are in Indiana.
Okay.
And amazing things sometimes happen here. We also brought Secretary of Agriculture under Reagan, Earl Butz, who resigned after a joke about people of Polish American extractions and ducks, if you might recall. You know, we produced some pretty interesting characters. We also produced Kurt Vonnegut, who may explain a few things regarding why we are the way we are. But that issue is, I'm reluctant to write a death certificate. Rather, I would say it's terminal, and hopefully we'll die soon. But
One can hope. That really, actually, when you told me about that, that really kind of scared the heck out of me. And I try not to. I don't scare that easily these days. But that really did make me nervous. Yeah, the other thing I wanted just to bring up, because we have some other things to talk about, but the reason why we've been following this case with you is that it's oftentimes these state elections, local elections, municipal elections, where we really do have the voter, the everyday voter, has a lot more power than than we would in federal elections, and so when these elections, these lower level elections are being messed with, that means a further erosion of the voters' power, in my opinion.
Yeah, Copenhagen, by the way, worked for our current Lieutenant Governor, Mika Beckwith, who is the closest thing we have to a certifiable whack job at the state level, and happens to be a minister of sorts to boot. So
they tend to go together.
Yes.
And I'm ordained myself, but yes.
Well, no, some of my best friends are people of the cloth, but
Yeah.
he's in the Constitution was directly inspired by Jesus Christ camp. So
Excellent.
And well, no, not if you live here.
Yeah.
A
little bit of sarcasm.
Indiana is going to be an epicenter of the mail-in ballot problems.
Okay, that's good to keep our eyes on.
Yes, and it's an interesting coincidence that our postal delivery has become absolutely horrific. I don't want to go deep in the weeds on that. That might be good for a future episode. But there are addresses here where they get their mail almost weekly rather than daily.
And it does happen in other areas, but I am not surprised to hear about that. And the demise of our postal system is a great thorn in our side. Another thing that has undergone a demise is Voice of America. And just a little bit of backstory on that. Voice of America was a government broadcast radio service. It broadcasted outside the U.S. We reported recently about some things going on with that. But I actually started reporting on that back over when I was at Hard Lens back in, I think, 2019, 2020. The Trump administration was kind of pushing at Voice of America's editorial independence at that point, was messing with it. And we began to see this erosion of the Voice of America broadcasts from, in English. And so in English, but also in other languages. And you shared this with me, what is going on with Voice of America. Two things that you shared. First of all, you also shared with me the Voice of America website, which has not been updated since 2025. The news stories on there are from 2025. You did mention that the editorials are still being published, but they are not. It's hard to find them. And now Voice of America it sounds like it's on shortwave. It's barely broadcasting at all.
Yeah, it would take a half hour to give you the full play-by-play. So I'm going to give you the highlight reel instead. But here too, I need to set the table. VOA is part of a larger U.S. broadcasting ecosystem that was sort of a good cop, bad cop combination. VOA was the good cop. It was supposed to be America's best objective face. And then the bad cop, in quotes, was broadcasters like Radio Free Europe, Radio Marti, Radio Farda, Radio Sawa, Radio Free Asia, things that were more or less overtly designed to help destabilize unfriendly governments by, quote, enlightening their populations, unquote. VOA was supposed to be the good cop. And it has always been a political football regarding who should control it, what should be in it. It has had moments of error before, including some years back, a disastrous rolling news experiment that could best be described as people not ready for prime time on stations like WBBM maybe ended up here. Fortunately, it returned to sanity to a degree. But before the Trump administration stepped in, it was already taking a lot of content from AFP, which is France's news agency in English, and Reuters. So there was already a lot of non-American content going out over VOA. And that raised concerns even among some of us who were otherwise friendly. There's something to be said for buying American there. So Trump 2 comes along, and Carrie Lake was sent in, I don't really think to dismantle it. I think in her heart, she was truly believing that she could find a way to convert it into something like Voice of Trump. But she had the mandate to cut it to its statutory minimum, and they blew up as much as they possibly could. Ironically, some of the survivors were the other broadcasters like Radio Marti, which is something I could spend a half hour talking about its scandals. But it placates the Cuban American donor community in places like South Florida. So it's a sort of sacred cow for politicians. The employees were not laid off in the sense that they were sent into the world of unemployment. They were put on indefinite leave, kind of a legal maneuver. Yeah.
Your Freudian slip is showing there.
Yes, it is. And I didn't intend to say that, but in retrospect, if I had a do-over, yes, I would have. They were getting paid to do nothing.
Okay.
And they filed a suit to get their jobs back. The courts technically honored that, but the problem is, while this was happening, the original office space that they might have gone into was repurposed, decommissioned.
Oh.
And there is legislation pending in the Congress to put the remnant of whatever survives directly under the State Department. And originally, VOA was under the aegis of an ever-changing umbrella that was last known as USAGM.
Okay.
And Congress is working diligently to eliminate that and replace it with an information services agency that would be directly under state.
You know,
in the meantime, getting back to your original observation, no news is going out over VOA proper in English.
Okay.
There are still some rump broadcasts going out in Korean, Mandarin, and a few other East Asian languages, but it's a very limited schedule. The only place where you'll find English updating is a fairly frequent editorial on the website, but that's website only. It's not broadcast. I know I'm being talky here, but one important point. VOA Special English is how millions of people around the world learned English. Special English had a limited vocabulary, and it was broadcast rather more slowly than you and I would normally converse. But there was a reason for that.
Yeah, they were learning English.
Yes.
We were teaching people English.
Yes.
Okay. You know, and then I didn't realize, I didn't know about that. So that was absolutely fascinating when you and I were talking about this earlier. But and that they're doing that was one of the purposes of VOA. The other thing that, you know, that gets me is I'm thinking about a couple of things. First of all, just the crumbling infrastructure. When you have a website that hasn't been updated since 2025, it's worse than having no website at all, as far as I'm concerned. It just, with no explanation, nothing. I just think it looks really bad for any organization to have a website that is that's obviously has a date on it that's way in the past. And it's almost, it's really, I would say, demoralizing, I would think, for VOA folks.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the while part of my heart is with the former employees, reality is they haven't read enough Dilbert cartoons. If they somehow found a way to get back into the office,
Right.
there are a million different ways the administration can make it a dystopian hellhole that would make them regret the day that they re-entered the room. And I really don't think that has occurred. Well, it has occurred to some of them. There are a few articles out there about how many of them have decided to go. Some of them are baristas now. Some of them are finding other radio or television outlets. Some of them are getting the memo.
Yeah.
But some of them still have the belief that they can someday go back into the office, do their jobs, and maybe they need to talk to a few postal workers before.
Yeah.
The $64,000 question, and now I'll in today's money, $64 million question for me is Neo Caligula could have made this the voice of Trump. He had all the parts and places to do it, and he probably would have skated in the courts had he done that. So why didn't he? And my best theory, looking at the communications of the executive branch generally, is that anything that is competition to Truth Social is, I know this is doing a little psychoanalysis here, but consider all the times that Truth Social has trumped, pun intended, his own cabinet members or the other. When's the last time you watched a Pentagon briefing or for anything other than entertainment?
Yeah.
Or a White House press briefing? You know going in that a tweet is going to come out that just wipes it all away. So I believe, and it's worth noting here that Truth Social is a commercial entity owned by Mr. Trump et al. So I believe in my heart that's why we haven't seen a MAGA version of these broadcasting entities. Trump really does wish that would just all go away and everybody would subscribe to Truth Social instead.
You know, and he's also charging money now at like $100,000 a month for banking institutions and that sort of thing, or financial firms and whatnot, to get early access to his posts.
Yes.
And that's going on. So actually your theory, in my view, makes a lot of sense. I did also want to mention, we've talked a little bit about this on the show in the past, and I want to share this again, that, you know, when we talk about the loss of Voice of America, that sort of thing, to remind folks that in the U.S., when, you know, where we're living a relatively luxurious existence, not as much as in the past, but that access to media outlets is very commonplace. In a lot of other areas around the world, when a media outlet goes, they may be losing one of their very few bits of access to the outside world. I remember when the BBC News Service, World Service, discontinued its, I believe it was its Middle Eastern branch or its Arab branch. I forget what they called it, but people who were in areas where there was civil war were saying, look, during our civil wars, those BBC radio broadcasts were our one link to the outside world. The local, the local stations were not operating, or they were under government control. It was their one bit of access to this. So when these broadcasts, over-the-air broadcasts, go away from other countries, that deeply impacts people around the world. I also just wanted to share, and here we go. It's our day today's. Today's our, I'm putting it in the comments, today's new Substack newsletter show notes. We've got a list that you've provided us of some great stations around the world that do broadcast in English. You do not need a shortwave radio or even, to hear them. They stream online, so you can hear them, and you can hear different perspectives from different countries. Now, do these countries have an agenda? Of course they have their agendas, and so do we. But it's a way to hear from other countries, around the world, get their perspectives. You can also hear music. There's oftentimes other cultural things that you can learn, you can hear and be exposed to as well. So if you're not subscribing to our Substack, please do so. The link is in the comments. It's also in our show descriptions.
Yes, and as an editorial comment, I sincerely believe, having been a child of shortwave in the 60s and 70s, the fact that the world was communicating with each other via that medium, that's not what unilaterally stopped us from blowing ourselves up. But I do think it played a significant role because we understood, if we were listening, that there were human beings in these other countries. They had cultures. They were not specifically out to get us. And the relative absence of that dialogue in 21st century media makes it easier to demonize people in other countries.
Mhm. Yeah.
That list you shared has China, Vietnam. Russia made a move I would consider counterintuitive. They went to the world of cell phones, which I think is a mistake they're regretting now.
Mhm.
But BBC is still out there online, not so much on terrestrial. But I can turn on my shortwave, the actual radio in the morning, and listen to CGTN from China. And whatever you think of the People's Republic of China, it's big, it's advanced, you need to hear, and it's not a we will bury you type of station.
Yeah.
There are some things on the regular news that are a little ominous, but we're making so many foreign policy blunders around the world that they don't need to make stuff up. They can just report the news, and it's kind of sobering.
Yeah, and I want to just respond here. Absolutely, and you know, the Voice of America certainly is an arm of American state media, and when I call it propaganda, that I'm not going to argue with you. And we recently reported on the Smith Modernization Act. One concern that I think we do have, and that I have continued to maintain, is whether we should continue to have easy access to anything that we're publishing abroad. People should not have to hunt it down, in my opinion. We should be able to see it. And yes, I'm very concerned about people being propagandized in our own country. I'm also concerned about it overseas as well. But I also think that there needs to be an openness to media so that people can examine it and scrutinize it. On both, you know, for whether you're a human being, just a regular citizen, or whether you're a journalist, people need to be able to do that with that full understanding that this is state media with its agenda. And that's also true of private media. Private media also has its agendas as well. I favor openness and transparency. But I also want to point out that Voice of America did do things that were not strictly propaganda. Again, you could have some, you had the language learning opportunities. There's culture. There's other aspects as well that people can make connections with each other about. So, thank you very much for that comment.
And it's always, I always like to say, you know, be skeptical of your information, wherever you get it from, especially these days, because you never know if there may be an underlying agenda. There may be a billionaire in the background that you don't know of. Skeptical doesn't mean paranoid. It just means, don't take things in whole cloth when, you have your critical thinking skills as well. And as always with journalism, always, reference more than just one source, particularly with very important issues. So
those of us who grew up with the medium in the 60s and 70s, like my diet included Moscow and Beijing and Hanoi and Havana, but also London and Bonn, which is where Deutsche Welle was broadcasting out of back then. I did not turn into a raving communist revolutionary, but I was listening critically. If you listen to a dozen different perspectives, all of them critically, the truth is in there somewhere. But if you take any one as the voice of absolute truth, then you probably shouldn't be listening to anything at all, frankly.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to add regarding the propaganda point, I heard an interesting comment from Charles Galloway of the UK the other day. And I'm not sure I totally agree, but I think he might be onto something. The US and Western European countries ban Russian television right now. You can't do a Russian station on medium wave. China doesn't have that. If you want, you can turn on a lot of urban cable systems and watch CGTN as well. And that begs the question, how did Russia get banned and China not? And his argument was that China has a soft power deficit. Russia got banned because it was actually reaching people, quote unquote, and China was sort of being disregarded. I'm not sure I accept that 100%, but I'm still wrestling with the question of, why did that happen?
Hey, Bill, did you were you talking about George Galloway?
George Galloway. I'm sorry, I misspoke.
Okay, we have one of our UK viewers. You know, she'll beat us if we're not correct on stuff.
Yeah,
and not in a good way. Yeah.
Thank you for the correction.
No, thank you. I was wondering about that myself, but I didn't want to say anything because, again, there are people.
No.
Different, same last names, and RT. I really liked RT America when we had it here, before they had to take off. I thought that a lot of their stuff was fresh. It was a lot more interesting than what I was seeing elsewhere. I didn't have any illusions about the perspectives there, but I did find it to be very interesting stuff. So it was good television.
I think most of what has happened, and again, I'm saying this from the perspective of decades of listening, most of what's happened in recent years is that the more savvy countries have figured out you don't need to tell lies, just carefully curate which stories you choose to present. And that in itself is an editorial position. Telling part of the truth is every bit as good as making stuff up. A fact, unfortunately, which is lost on some politicians in the US right now, they don't need to be writing fiction as some of us have been. And I'm not speaking within the VOA, but rather within the political branch of our government that runs that. There's no need to write fiction, just carefully choose which parts of the truth you want to present. And our foreign competitors have figured that out. But again, that's why you can't, or rather why you shouldn't listen to just one country. You should listen to several.
Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about shortwave radio for a second here, particularly this website here, the North American Shortwave Association. And you're a writer for this, is that correct?
Yes, I do a monthly column called Shortwave Program Spotlight. And what I do is binge listen to some selected stations during the month. And then rather than just publish schedules, I actually comment on the different programs that are available. In fact, I happen to be binge listening CGTN this month. It's not something you can subscribe to directly. It's a membership journal, but membership is pretty cheap by membership standards. And you don't have to have any special qualifications to join.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of stuff besides me in that journal, including one of my colleagues, Dan Robinson, that you see there, is a former VOA employee for many, many years. He's a conservative, and he has actually become one of VOA's most vociferous critics. But while I don't agree with 100% of his views on everything, he's probably unearthed a lot of information about VOA. Well, let me put it this way. I'm in favor of a VOA 2.0 myself. I don't think the status quo ante is necessarily good for anyone's health. My vision of what that looks like might be a little bit different than his, but he has shined a light on some problems that caused me to look at things in a different way than I might have. So even if you're not an active shortwave user, there's some interesting stuff in there.
All right. Thank you so much. And yeah, there is some great content, including your own shows, which I've linked to in the show notes, that are on shortwave. Your music shows are fantastic. And again, if you don't want to bother with a shortwave receiver, many of these stations, I think they do stream. So you do check out the stations.
Yeah, if I can be excused for a gratuitous plug, but my excuse is that it's a true example of globalism. Friday's guest on Uncle Bill's Melting Pot is a fellow named Ian Brennan, and he's sort of a global equivalent of what Alan Lomax did a century ago, except he's going from country to country. So he's helping me present music from Oman, which is
right now on the news, yes.
And it gets better. Oman has a centuries-old bagpipe tradition that predates the British going there. So it's Oman bagpipers.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But also Djibouti, Botswana, Rwanda, Burundi we're doing, and the Ta people in Tanzania. And the Ta include a lot of cliques. And it's a dying
right.
language. Anyway, we're going to a lot of different places you wouldn't go to on NPR even.
All right.
All right, Bill.
It's one
Sounds good.
It's one of the most fascinating guys I've ever met.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. Omani bagpipes. I was today years old when I learned about those. I always thought it was just like the Scots had invented those, but you know.
Oh no, that's been all over the world for even before we knew what Scots were. There's an actual album that he released, Omani Bagpipe Singers.
Oh wow!
And you won't be dancing a jig to it, but it's fascinating listening.
No, seriously, I'm excited.
I don't know. I get enough adult beverages in me. You know, it doesn't really take much to get the old feet going. So, you know, give me now. I have to go search out Omani bagpipes. You know, I discovered Mongolian folk rock several years ago, and I'm like, there's all kinds of music out there.
Oh, have you listened to the Who?
Yeah, I love the Who. Yeah. Not the WHO, folks. The HU.
Yes, yes.
And very, very good stuff. So highly recommend them as well. So,
well, when Lady was working Radio Angela, we had a fellow from Finland who did a wonderful show, Finfolk, but he himself was a folk singer.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, a throat singer.
A throat singer. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are even guys doing that in Finland. So.
Those were the days, yes.
Yeah, our buddy Yoninah in the chat here, Hillbilly Banjo. Yeah, Omani bagpipe sounds like something DJ Yoninah would mix with Weed's music. Yeah, if you could check out DJ Yoninah on Rumble, he has a great show on there, and he does a fantastic job of mixing music on there. He had the Fix. He had a Fix mix on there the other day, and I thought that was very interesting. So,
actually, along that vein, there is an album that a long deceased fellow did that he might enjoy. It's Martin Bennett, but Martin with a Y, and the album is called Bothy Culture.
Right on.
And Bothy is Bothy. It mixes some bagpipe sounds with a lot of electronica, and trust me, whoever wrote that comment, they should go look for that.
Yeah, Yoninah's always on the lookout for eclectic music like that for mixing purposes too. So we appreciate you, Bill. You're going to stay the rest of the show, right? You're hanging out there at somebody else's house. You got probably raiding their fridge, making sure they got goodies for you there. That's good.
Yeah, I have to wait till the local authorities do their donut run. So I'll hang out with you for a little bit.
Well, let's get to the prize keepers. Of course, it's news you can use,
Yes.
and unfortunately, this is news people need to know about. You've heard of the poopy salads and the salmonella peppers. Now we have glass in your fruit bars. Yay? Question mark. Outshine fruit bars recalled over possible glass contamination. There we are right there. That's their strawberry brand there. Made with real fruit and glass. Well, I'm sorry. No, it doesn't say glass. Sorry. So Dreyer's Grand Ice Cream Incorporated is voluntarily recalling a limited number of Outshine fruit bars due to possible foreign material contamination with glass. The Walnut Creek, California-based company announced the recall on Sunday, August 16th. The affected products include 5 flavors of Outshine 6-count, 2.5-ounce fruit bars: strawberry, watermelon, grape, tangerine, and black cherry. The recalled lots were distributed to retailers nationwide. I believe Whole Foods carries that as well, if I remember correctly. So only specific batch codes of the 5 flavors are subject to the recall. Consumers should check the bottom of their package for the batch code and UPC number to determine if their product is included. And this link will be in our Substack, so you can check these out for yourself. No illnesses or injuries have been reported in connection with the recall, according to Dreyer's. Consumers who have purchased any of the affected products are urged to dispose of them immediately or return them to the store where they were purchased for a full refund. Anyone who believes they may have been injured by the affected product should contact a healthcare provider right away. Consumers with questions or concerns can reach Dreyer's Grand Ice Cream Incorporated directly by email at dryers@casupport.com. They've said in a statement that food safety remains a top priority. So, yes.
It's always a top priority.
Grass, gas, or glass, nobody rides for free, right? I kind of tweaked that one a little bit there, but you're starting to see, like, this just seems to be the next in line of all these, like, something contaminated, or there's something with, things that aren't supposed to be in it. I mean, what's going on with our food supply now?
It is getting unnerving, and it's one of those situations where I can't tell whether we're just hearing about things more because we're just, we've got so many different outlets and the news is just, getting churned out that way, people are sharing it or whatnot, or whether we really do have a food supply problem. I think it bears investigation, but it is concerning because it seems like every time I turn around, there's, we've got pukey peppers and poopy lettuce and, glass in our treats and all kinds of stuff. And again, I said, I'm not sure if it's just that things are just speeding up and people are trying to be helpful, obviously, in sharing the information, or whether there is an actual problem. I don't know, but it is disturbing.
It just seems like cost cutting, cutting corners to make higher profits. I'm not saying that's in the case in this particular thing, but I mean, that's happened before where, you've had products that used to be, especially some of these long-standing products where back in the day, they were great. And nowadays they seem to be smaller and less tasty, that sort of thing. And it just seems like part of that has to do with corporate greed. What do you think, Bill?
I actually have a personal story to share in that regard. Remember black walnut ice cream?
Yeah.
I was practically addicted to that flavor. Go try to find it now. You won't. And I learned this in a long, strange trip after going to my normal gas station cooler to buy Prairie Farms brand, which is the local brand of that.
Mhm.
And they said they weren't selling that anymore. So I started looking around on the web. It's got to be some somewhere. And what I wandered into was a museum of or mausoleum rather, of former black walnut ice cream brands. I started doing a little research because black walnuts per se are obviously not extinct. And it turns out that making that flavor properly is labor intensive, expensive. They haven't come up with a way to make mock black walnut. And the ROI just got to the point where, fast forward, there is a Prairie Farms outlet in my town. So I drove over there and I walked into their office and said, I just got to ask, because your black walnut ice cream was the bomb. Are you going to be making that again? And they said no. But seriously, when you get off of here, go Google black walnut ice cream. And if you find out anywhere, any brand, let me know. But I would bet money that you won't. And it's all about return on investment.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Let's move on here with this story. As teens named AI sycophancy as mental health risk before any regulation did. So what's that mean? About 1 in 5 young people aged 13 to 22 already seek out AI chatbots for mental health advice. A qualitative study published Monday by Stanford researcher Caroline Figueroa found they know exactly what is wrong with the tools they are using. AI is designed to agree with them, and that agreement is making them worse. The teens in Figueroa's study named sycophancy as a discrete risk, describing in their own words that an AI that functions as a yes ma'am chat that feeds into your own delusions rather than providing the critical challenge they actually need. What they described is not a glitch. It is the predictable output of how large language models are trained, a structural flaw in the reward mechanism that no guardrail law passed so far has been designed to reach. Yeah, and you see that a lot in AI with the hallucinations and stuff like that too. Whereas recently I use AI sometimes for technical purposes, right? Like if I need to research what a program can do, oftentimes I'll get on there and say, hey, look, how does this work? And sometimes, and more often than not, it gives me the correct information. But there was a particular program I was trying to figure out the other day, and it took me on this wild goose chase. And finally, I said, "Do you even know how this program works?" And it said, "No. Well, it doesn't do what you want it to do," which wasted about an hour of my time. But with these kids, it's not just kids too, it's adults who use these things for a mental therapist as well, because it's easy, it's right there, and they may get the answers that they think they want, but they may not be getting the ones that they actually really need to have. And I find this to be very disturbing also when you couple the fact that getting actual mental health treatment from humans costs an arm and a leg, and a lot of people can't even afford regular medical help, much less mental health from human professionals.
And I think one thing to keep in mind also, and the sycophancy is really important, because a good therapist, if you're able to get a good therapist, if you can afford the good therapist, and that's a whole other topic here, is that they're not supposed to be blowing smoke up your butt. Now a good therapist is going to be supportive and is, going to build trust, but also needs to challenge you and confront you. And at some point say, hey, look at what you're doing here. Why are you behaving this way? Or you're thinking this way. Why are you thinking this way? Does this way of thinking make sense? Would you, if a friend came to you and said they were thinking this way, would you agree with them? There are a number of things that a good therapist is going to do to challenge the person so the person can change their thinking and change their behavior. And if you've got a sycophant who's always yesing you and not saying, what are you doing here? You're hurting yourself, you're beating yourself up, you're making things worse for yourself. And you're not going to get that kind of challenge from an AI bot. They're not put together to do that. And that can be very dangerous. It's a waste of time at one point, or reinforcing bad behaviors and patterns. But on the other end of that spectrum could end up being devastating, if not deadly, for the person who is consulting with that chatbot. It is very disturbing. And it's interesting that younger folks were seeing this early on, because I've seen an awful lot of adults who become very enmeshed with their bots, and there's been some bad consequences, and I know of personally.
Yeah, Jacqueline makes a good point here. Healthcare, including dental, mental, and sight, should be free for the under 18s, but it may not be just the cost that's the issue, but the shortage of qualified therapists too. Any thoughts, Bill?
At the risk of sounding glib, I am reminded that Hannibal Lecter was a mental health professional. So yeah,
charged good rates, I believe, too. So
yeah. There are so many different schools of mental health thought that, while part of me is sympathetic to the idea that everybody should have access, that sort of implies that's getting covered at the taxpayer level. There are contradictions and paradoxes with doing that. One of them is, do we pay for every school of thought out there? And if not, are we excluding one that should be included? Where I'm going with this is, I don't think there's a perfect answer. There are only less bad ones. What I do know is that outsourcing it to AI is not a good way to go. AI is itself, I would think of AI maybe as an electronic Hannibal Lecter, in the sense that it itself is missing some parts.
Yeah. I tend to use it as kind of like an advanced search engine. I don't want to get knowledge so much per se from it, but I want it to be able to find the knowledge for me. And then I can check out those websites myself and say, okay, cool. Because those things do hallucinate enough. And a lot of them tend to be lazy like that, especially, and with kids on their phones, and some adults too, who are just like glued to those things. It's an easy way to get somebody that's not judgmental to talk to you about your problems. But at the same time, like Lainey said, if you're just hearing what you want to hear, you're not really getting any help. You're just in an echo chamber.
Yeah, whenever I'm doing cooperative things with people and operating rule that I have is, thou shalt not bring AI into our collaborative space. Yeah. And of course, it's easier to stipulate that than enforce it, but it is a rule we have down there. In the case of your usage, Warren, you aren't expecting AI to show you empathy or analyze your deepest innermost thoughts.
Right.
And once we get into mental health, we're looking for some combinations of those traits in those therapists, quote unquote.
Yeah. Speaking of technology, this might be some good news here, as U.S. courts will start publishing how often the government uses spyware. I'm gonna spoiler alert it. It's all the time, all the time. So the FBI has been using hacking techniques and tools such as spyware since at least 1998, but to date there is no public data counting how often the feds were deploying them. That's about to change, at least for the use of spyware for tapping into someone's real-time communications. So starting 3 years from now, because that's how slow bureaucracy goes, U.S. judiciary will publicly disclose precisely how many times judges authorize the use of wiretaps to be carried out with hacking tools and spyware, which fall under the category of what the feds call network investigating techniques, or NITS. For almost 2 decades, the Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts, which coordinates operations across the judiciary, has issued annual wiretap reports. These reports detail how many wiretaps were authorized every year, breaking the numbers down by whether federal or state judges ordered them, in which states the wiretaps were conducted, and what type of crime was investigated, and other data. Wiretaps allow police to gain real-time access to people's calls, messages, and other communications. Given how invasive wiretaps can be to a person's privacy, law enforcement have to present a high bar of evidence that a crime is being committed before a judge will authorize the use of a live tap, or at least in theory. As such, wiretaps are generally issued in far fewer numbers than search warrants, but can still sweep up a large amount of people's communications. Years ago, for example, one wiretap allowed a massive surveillance operation that collected millions of text messages over the course of 3 months. The annual wiretap reports break down the type of wiretaps authorized during the year, from audio wiretaps that can collect real-time voice from phone calls, oral taps that can rely on using real-world microphones and other eavesdropping techniques, and the electronic tapping of text messages, emails, and other messages as they pass through a provider's network. The Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts told Democratic Senator Ron Wyden this week that it will begin tracking the new spyware hacking surveillance category starting in the 2028 wiretap report, which will be published the following year. So we know about wiretaps. We know about James Clapper testifying in front of Congress saying, "No, we don't collect people's data. We don't do anything." And Oopsie Sauce, as his nose grew and poked out the camera, turns out that they actually do that. So now they're going to tell you more specifically how they're invading your privacy, but not until 3 years from now.
Yeah, it's comforting.
Yeah, and a couple of things are left out of the conversation there. It sounds like they're going to disclose where the court said go ahead, which actually is the tip of the iceberg, as all three of us know, regarding how often it actually happens.
Mm-hmm.
And the court wouldn't know if the court didn't approve it, would it?
That's true. Yeah.
So we're actually going to be seeing a slice of a larger pie. And I have another question, which is the way that reads. I'm not an attorney, but my gut tells me that FISA probably, that nice little 4-letter acronym starting with F. My gut tells me that FISA may possibly not really be covered by that, honest.
Yeah. Well, especially since the Patriot Act too.
Yeah.
Where they really loosened up those regulations on who can get tapped and stuff like that. So it's, and that people have been arguing about that, like I said, for over 20 years, since the Patriot Act, and where it was just like, well, we're going after these terrorists, and we're not collecting and listening to your phone calls and stuff like that. And it turns out there were leaks from these agencies that said, yeah, we actually are listening to your calls and sometimes making fun of them, that sort of thing. Kind of like along the same lines with these flock cameras where supposedly it's supposed to be for our safety. It says for safety, but they don't really say the safety of who. But then you see these, police chiefs, these police officers and stuff using flock cameras to track down ex-wives, ex-girlfriends, that sort of thing. So it just seems like, again, yeah, okay, it's great that you're telling us that you're when and where you're doing this, but at the same time, that still doesn't stop the invasion of privacy. That's like saying, hey, I'm going to break into your house tonight. Yeah, that's all well and good, but should you even be breaking into my house? No, hell no.
Indeed.
Flock, by the way, is a hot button local issue here, and in a episode to be named later, I'd be happy to come back and tell you what's happening in Hoosier city halls and courts, but not today.
Well, let's float over to San Francisco, figuratively speaking, unless you know how to teleport. That would be pretty cool. Don't tell the government.
We wouldn't need public transportation then, but
yeah, don't tell the government. They might try and use that too. So documenting harassment on public transit. So harassment is a real yet overlooked issue for many regular riders of public transportation. While it can happen to any rider. You okay there, Bill?
Uh-huh.
All right. You sound like maybe the desk collapsed or something. While it can happen to any rider, it disproportionately affects women, people of color, and LGBT plus individuals. Eyes on Board is a volunteer-led project aiming to highlight and combat these incidents. The project derives its name from Eyes on the Street, a fundamental concept coined by urbanist Jane Jacobs. It describes how natural surveillance from residents, pedestrians, and passerby breeds safety and deters crime. The project consists of an anonymous survey asking questions on the nature and details of the incident and a live map showcasing the locations of past reports. This project is significant for 4 crucial reasons. It's collecting crucial stats on the factors that contribute to harassment: time of day, location, route, and the specific type of harassment. The live map was included as a space to promote solidarity between targets of harassment. Due to the vulnerable nature of these experiences, it can often feel humiliating to talk about, which is rather isolating. Additionally, the way this issue is normalized and accepted as part of the female experience makes it feel almost silly to report incidents that are less severe in nature. Along with promoting solidarity, the map also aims to create a deeper understanding of the effects and scale of harassment for those who may not experience it frequently. For many city dwellers, harassment is a frequent problem. It's experienced on the street, on the train, and at work. It's experienced whether you are alone or surrounded, tying back to the concept of eyes on the street. By creating a deeper understanding of the severity of harassment, this project will hopefully inspire natural surveillance. It provides education and resources on how to handle witnessing harassment in a manner that keeps the person intervening, the victim, and the people nearby safe. It also details what constitutes harassment. This is important to know for women who brush off minor instances and for men who may not know that their behavior is damaging. This project can appear to be demonizing public transit. However, it aims to do the very opposite. It's not suggesting that public transit is inherently unsafe, because it isn't. In many instances, these incidents do not directly threaten the safety of victims. They are still uncomfortable, violating, and exhausting. They affect when and where we move around our mobility. And I know in New York, when I lived there, the big slogan was, if you see something, say something.
Yeah.
Now, this was in the wake of 9/11 that was talking about like bags, that were just left behind, that sort of thing. But, but the emphasis on people being harassed wasn't there, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was just more of like a practical safety thing, which tended to lend to somewhat paranoid behavior from people. They would just, there would be a paper bag or something that somebody left behind as trash, and they go, "Oh God, that," and just kind of blow it out of proportion. But to have something like this, where they're like, especially in areas where there's not cameras frequently, you're kind of leaving this up to the particular person that's reporting the incident, whether they interpret the situation as some sort of harassment, may have something to do with their own experiences, right? Like, maybe they are victims of harassment themselves. They recognize what it is and they're able to report it, whereas some people who don't experience it at all may not report it at all. I mean, what do you guys think about this program?
I've been talking about, I think a few weeks ago, we were talking about free public transit and the problems with public transit and why we think it's so important, but that public transit also has to be an attractive form of transportation for people, not only affordable, but, consistent schedules, routes that make actual sense, but also you want to be safe. And the issue of harassment on public transit is huge for many people. It is often difficult to know how to respond. People who have tried to intervene have sometimes been attacked. Some people don't intervene, or they may seem not to intervene. They're actually on their phone texting or trying to notify the transportation authority that something is happening. And again, they've pointed out that for a lot of women, it's something that they come to accept. Or people who are disabled or people who are small, it's something they come to accept and they don't even bother to report it. But it does inhibit the use of public transportation. And it doesn't necessarily make people the kind of advocates for public transportation that they could be. So I included this. I thought it was a fascinating project. And I'd actually like to see it happening more. But there also has to be some, again, this is where the investment in public transit, investing in the public good, not treating it as a for-profit business proposition, but a way of investing in our shared culture, our community, our infrastructures, so that public transportation becomes very attractive to people. And one of those things is going to be finding ways to combat harassment. So I think this is a really good start for that. Because again, I know a lot of people, including myself, will make decisions about whether we use public transportation, where we sit in the vehicle, or whether it's a bus or a train, where and how we sit. I've learned always to sit in an outer seat. I never sit next to the window so that somebody can't block me in. And again, I've never driven a car. I've never had a driver's license. I've always relied on public transit. And I'd like to be able to do so. I think many people would like to do so. But it has to be a feasible option for people.
Definitely. Okay. Well, let's move on then to the recurring tide. These are stories we've been covering, and these are updates to these stories. So our friends in Europe know about the heat wave that is pretty deadly there, as a matter of fact. And in 1 week during Europe's record heat wave, deaths increased by 16,000. So there's the chart right there. A week of stifling heat in Europe this June was unusually deadly, mortality data shows, producing a historic increase in deaths in a continent where major heat waves are becoming more common. Around 16,000 more people than usual died in Europe during the heat wave, according to an analysis by the European Mortality Monitoring Network. Most of the deaths were in northern countries, France, Belgium, and Germany, that are not accustomed to such high temperatures and struggled to respond. Now you could see all this in red and maroon here. That's all the hot temperatures that they suffered. In late June, temperatures topped 100 degrees across much of the continent. That would be 100 degrees Fahrenheit, including Spain and Italy. But it was only in Northwest Europe, where countries were less prepared for the heat, that death spiked so abruptly. Countries in Southern Europe have experienced extreme heat for centuries. and they have ways of coping with it that their northern neighbors do not. And the use of air conditioning remains low in much of Northern Europe, where it has become a political issue. Deaths caused by extreme temperatures are difficult to measure directly, so researchers look at excess deaths, the number of deaths from any cause above what would be expected at that time of year based on historic trends. Usually, spikes of excess deaths are recorded in the winter when the respiratory viruses circulate, but during the week of the June heat wave, there were more excess deaths than in any week last winter. Major deadly heat waves are rare in recent European history. One hit the continent in 2003, killing tens of thousands during, I remember that too. It was it was hot here too in the United States. During another in 2022, just over 16,000 more people than usual died in a single week in July, according to European Mortality Monitoring Network data, when it was the southern part of the continent that experienced the most extreme temperatures, with Spain reaching 115 degrees Fahrenheit. June ended up being Western Europe's hottest on record, and scientists warn that climate change may mean worse to come. The surge of deaths in countries built for a cooler climate pointed to the cost of not being ready for rising temperatures. Yeah, and it just seems like, as Bob Dylan says, the times they are a changing, particularly when it comes to heat and cold too. But these summers, like Lainey was talking about earlier in the show, how the South part of the United States has become particularly more extreme, and seeing that in Europe is pretty shocking too.
It is, and the one thing we've also talked about before on previous shows is that a lot of homes in Europe and UK do not have air conditioning. They're not really set up for that. And in fact, many homes in like I think it's in the UK are set up to keep the heat in, which makes it even more difficult for them. But they're just not prepared for this. I don't know that they have in the US. I think we have better awareness about, it's not great, but about better awareness about heat exhaustion, heat stroke, and what can happen there. I don't think that's happening over there, and Europe is just not prepared for this. When I saw this, I found that Hawk, he's a YouTuber, he was talking about it, and then I went and looked it up, and I found this in the New York Times. I saw what was going on, and I said, oh my gosh, this is simply awful.
Yeah, I mean, New York State has been classified as like a what do they call it? It's like a jungle type environment now. But there's another name for it. I can't remember it off the top of my head. But the thing here in the United States is the northern states are starting to see increasing numbers or amount of days that have these hot temperatures. Here in Illinois, and that we just received record number of tornadoes in the state. And of course, that has to do with high temperatures and different various weather things that go along with that. I mean, Bill, you saw that in Indiana, a lot of flooding there, and of course we were talking about Gary, Indiana, in the northwest corner of the state. They've been out of power because of these storms, and a lot of the stuff that we're seeing, it hasn't been seen. It was freakishly in the past, and now it just seems more regular.
I'm going to speak from the perspective of a gardener too. I've come to call it global weirding because in places like where I live, it's not that the temperature is all hotter all the time, but there are wild swings which confuse my vegetables and flowers during the course of the year. And it's not a crisis yet, but if that continues and is exacerbated, it's going to become increasingly difficult to grow certain types of things here outdoors.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, that I'm glad you mentioned food, because it's affecting their food as well over in Europe, as EU is facing food crisis. So agricultural producers across the European Union have warned of sharp drops in yields after Europe has been hit by successive heat waves this summer. Economists have said the losses are likely to push food prices higher in the coming months. June and July were the hottest on record in Western Europe, according to the EU's Copernicus Climate Change Service, which has warned of a continued risk of heat waves affecting much of Europe through August and into September, too. In France, one of the EU's largest grain producers, groundwater reserves were severely depleted across much of the country by early August, according to the National Geological Survey. Prince de Bretagne, a major growers cooperative in Brittany, warned last week of a historic vegetable crisis. It projected yield declines of 40% for peas, 60% for broccoli, and between 50 and 100% for artichokes this summer. Eric Legras, president of Yoninah, France's leading association of canned and frozen vegetable producers, said severe heat had also hit northern and southwestern France, describing the crisis as exceptional. Livestock farmers have meanwhile warned of a growing forage production deficit ahead of winter. France's National Committee for the Promotion of Eggs has estimated that heat waves have cut daily output by around 1 million eggs, while poultry farms have reported high mortality rates. In northern Italy, home to one of Europe's main rice-growing regions, water shortages have left some paddies completely dead, burnt, with the rice dried out, according to Coldiretti, the country's largest farmers association. Farmers in Spain have likewise reported considerable shortfalls in cereal yields, as well as cattle fodder deficits. The German Farmers Association on Tuesday warned that grain production would be 7% or 3.3 million tons lower than last year. The worst hit regions in the south of the country could potentially suffer total crop failures. And in Poland, business outlet Pol's Biznesu predicted last month that persistent drought could force the country to become more reliant on food imports. Analysis at Zurich Insurance Group and several European banks have estimated that the heat waves could cost the EU between 50 billion and 180 billion euros. So when we think of hot temperatures, yes, you're sitting there sweating in your apartment or whatever in Europe, but then you think, what about the food? And the prices are already high for food already.
I'm also going to mention this. I am working on a special report on the food system right now. I'm going to give a little teaser. State of Arkansas, where I'm temporarily but currently living, is the largest U.S. producer, producer of rice. And what has happened this year is there have been a number of factors that are going to significantly reduce that rice crop. Just in terms of acreage planted, we're looking at a roughly 40 to 50% reduction this year in what's been planted. So I'm going to be having a special report very, very soon on this, because we're going to pull in geopolitical stuff. We're going to bring in climate. We're also going to bring in food policy and SNAP. And all that into this, but that's something that I've been looking at very closely. This is very unnerving.
Yeah, definitely. So let's go to the Man of War stings here. You know, it's not just Iran that Trump's been messing with. Our friends in Greenland, which is a very terrible name for a country that's like 99% ice.
It was the original real estate scam. So in a way, there's a certain poetry to all of this.
Yeah, wasn't it like some Viking or something? He called it Iceland, or he called it Greenland. He said, "Yeah, come on over. It's green." They get over there, and the first wump ever heard was for you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, and there's a certain, I don't know, poetry, historical symmetry that it's now being harassed by somebody who made his bones doing what?
Real estate scams.
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
So Danish conscripts have been deployed to Greenland amid Trump's threats. So, you know, he's talking about taken Greenland over, and you know, it's Greenland's controlled by Denmark, and Denmark said, I don't know about that, fat boy. So Denmark has deployed a batch of fresh military conscripts to Greenland for the first time in modern history as Copenhagen seeks to assert its control over the Arctic territory in response to threats of annexation from Trumpy. Around 100 conscripts from the Schleswig Infantry Regiment arrived in Nuuk in early August. Denmark's military said in a press release, the group will divide their time between training and operational tasks, the military explained, with some troops stationed in Nuuk and others sent 350 kilometers north to Kangerlussuaq. Amazed I got that one out. An air base used by U.S. forces throughout the Second World War and the Cold War. The conscripts deployed to Greenland are the first batch of recruits to serve 11-month stints in the Danish military. In 2024, Denmark extended conscription from 4 months to 11, broadened the draft to include women, and ordered annual conscription numbers to increase from 5,000 to 7,000. The fun fact about Greenland, too, is that underneath the ice is this old United States military base called I think it's called Camp Century or something like that, and basically they had nuclear reactors and stuff under there to heat it, and the geniuses back in the 60s hadn't figured out that this ice moves, right? Because and when it moves, it tends to crush stuff that's underneath it. So they have left all this stuff that's underneath the ice there. The U.S. military did, and now it's, as the ice starts to thaw, this stuff is going to leak out into, what is it, the North Sea or whatever that is that's around Greenland. So it's be like Fukushima 2.0. So I wonder why Trump really wants Greenland. Is it because it's melting and that they could get at the natural resources better?
Specifically, the rare earths and metals that are believed to be under the soil there. Right now, our military, and it's a dirty little not so secret, a lot of the technology driving it is dependent upon rare earths and metals that are not monopolized, but close to by, guess who? People's Republic of China. And the odds that we'll have a ready supply of that indefinitely are shrinking by the day, given our misadventures over there. None of that justifies U.S. policy towards Greenland, but it does explain motive.
Right. It seems like Trump thinks it's like an easy target, and that Denmark will just roll over and say, oh, sure, just, do whatever you want with Greenland. And it turns out Denmark said, we don't want you coming over here doing that stuff. Don't they have like oil refinery or oil wells there or something like that already? I know they have a U.S. base there in Greenland. I'm not quite sure what that's about, though.
Oh, on paper, we can do all kinds of neat stuff by agreement with Denmark, just not waltz in and take over the place. But one only needs read Horton Hears a Hormuz to realize that Denmark might not necessarily roll over. So.
Yeah. I will only say I was recently listening. Actually, it was a couple months ago. I was listening to, it may have been BBC. I'm not positive. Don't hold me to that. But they had a representative from Denmark saying, "Look, if the U.S. tries to take over Denmark, we will." And he was very clear that they were willing to defend Greenland. And hearing somebody from Denmark's making these statements, I was at the gym, but I'll tell you, my blood ran cold when absolutely like hearing that. And he was dead serious. He was not being aggressive. He was very calm, very measured, pretty much what you would expect of a Dane. But there it was. And that, it was very unsettling.
Incidentally, in the world of shortwave, gratuitous plug on behalf of someone else, One of the links that I think is in the list that you shared was WRMI, which relays broadcasts from multiple other countries. But there's another world radio network that also carries it. There is a weekly show called Copenhagen Calling in English.
Oh, okay.
That is absolutely worth. It's not the official Danish government, but it's an excellent journalist, Ian Underwood in Denmark. It's absolutely worth following. I'm not carrying the schedule in my head, but you can go find it there.
Great, thank you.
Speaking of the Strait of Vermouth, as Scott Bessent calls it, our Treasury Secretary, the Strait of Vermouth. I really wish it was a Strait of Vermouth. I'd totally hook that up like cable. Iran it says not only are you not going to conquer our country, we're going to off your people for cash. So Iran offers $30K bounty for unaliving or capturing U.S. soldiers. Yikes! Look at that right there. Iran's military announced on Sunday that it was offering a bounty equivalent to $30,000 for killing or capturing U.S. soldiers, with the reward doubled if carried out by a woman.
I love that.
They
are trolling us so bad. I love Iranian trolls. This is awesome.
Well, speaking of trolls, so Trump basically said that the Strait of Vermouth, and that's what I'm going to call it from now on when I'm referencing Trump.
I like straight Vermouth.
The Strait of Vermouth is U.S. territory, and so Iran came back and said, well, okay, so California is Iranian territory. So their troll game is pretty good. So Army Chief Amir Hatami said the plan had been drawn up following a large number of requests to participate. According to the IRNA state news agency, there has been no known deployment of U.S. ground forces in Iran yet during the Middle East war, with the exception of a rescue mission in April for a downed American airman. Hatami did not provide any details on where or when the killing or capturing was expected to take place. It says anyone who kills or captures and hands over an invading American military personnel will receive a reward equivalent to $30,000 or 5 billion tomans from the Islamic Republic of Iran's army, he said, using an informal unit equivalent to 10,000 Iranian rials. Courageous Iranian women who carry out such an action will receive double the reward. Hatami repeated Iran's call for the U.S. to leave the Middle East and said they no longer have permission to enter the Persian Gulf, the Gulf of Oman, or the Strait of Vermouth. It's too bad. Because, I bet a lot of thirsty sailors there. So, and they're saying all this because, as we all know, Iran has been preparing for any kind of attack from the West for almost 50 years, right? Basically, since 79, they knew something was going to happen. They just didn't know which jackass was going to do it. And now that Trump and the military's efforts have failed miserably in the Middle East, they do have the upper hand, right? But to do this is just, I don't. Are they really serious about this? Will they really give like $30K to somebody or $60K to a lady if they do that?
I think that they're really exasperated. And there it is.
Going geopolitical on this, Iran has to look for a sweet spot where it hurts the U.S. enough to debilitate our appetite for war, but not so much that U.S. public opinion, which has largely been opposed to our not so excellent adventure, swings the other way. And to give you an example of what they won't do right now, even though they theoretically could, they still have an impressive number of missiles.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason why they couldn't lob those against U.S. ships and sink a few.
Mm-hmm.
There's a strategic reason why they don't. if they sink an aircraft carrier or two, that might swing U.S. opinion in favor of full support. So they have to look for things in the middle.
Yeah.
And that's not a new strategy. That dates back at least as far as Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
You know, harass the great Uncle Sam, but don't put him in a position where he has to hit you with everything and has public support for him. This is an example of something they can do where until and unless 1,000 extra bodies, and incidentally, we've been understating our death count as it is.
Oh, yeah.
And injury count.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Well, that's CENTCOM. That's Baghdad Bob of the United States basically saying that, you know, same thing about the USS Lincoln, same thing about the Gerald Ford. They say, oh, it's a laundry fire, when we all know that they just got shit hammered by Iranian missiles on the Gerald Ford. And this, the morale on the Abraham Lincoln has literally gone in the toilet.
Yeah.
On those ships as well.
Yeah. So looking at this specific measure here, let's say that 3 or 4 incidents happen. They can easily afford the freight. It's not going to turn the American people the other way, other than, you know, not enough to say nuke Tehran. And as Ron Popeil would say, but wait, there's more. One of Iran's largest domestic problems prior to this year was a rising tide of disaffection among its female population. If they have an opportunity to put a couple of female Iranian heroes, as defined by the government, in front of the Iranian people, that's a double win for them.
Yeah, they say, and they seem to be winning the propaganda war for sure.
Yeah,
especially with those what is it, the Lego videos?
Oh yeah, those were awesome. And they were paying attention. They saw that Americans loved it.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's not, what, like maybe a third of the Americans here actually even approve of the war over there. So all those factors go together, and that, you know, now Trump is thinking, or somebody's thinking about putting 300,000 ground troops in Iran. It's like,
oh, that's going to go well.
Yeah, it's that's meat grinder time right there. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people are gonna, even more people are gonna say, hey, just shoot him with weapons from the sky. Let's not put boots on the ground. Especially after he had promised, you know, before he even got elected, that he wasn't going to start any wars. But Trump lying, wow, that's a shock. Meanwhile, speaking of Trump, let's go to the press pool and his stooge over at the FCC. Looks like more time in court. ABC sues Trump's media regulator over demand for TV license renewals. So this has been an ongoing thing, but ABC has sued the FCC, arguing that it's being retaliated against for content-based reasons in a move it warns threatens the independence of the press. The network filed the lawsuit on Tuesday after being forced to apply early to renew its license to broadcast on the 8 local television stations it owns. It's waiting to hear whether the Brendan Carr-led FCC approves its renewal request, or more likely holds a hearing on their merits. Late last month, a group of prominent former FCC officials, including key staffers and commissioners appointed by both Democratic and Republican presidents, issued a warning in a filing that the agency is trying to send a chilling message to broadcasters after forcing ABC to apply early. Conservative organizations, including the Center for American Rights and the Media Research Center, filed petitions urging the FCC to deny the renewals, arguing that the network's journalism is politically biased. ABC also still faces an FCC investigation over the daytime talk show The View for a potential violation of equal time rules, and inquiry that remains open. So are we going to see more of these lawsuits, not just from ABC, from maybe like the the other mainstream media outlets as well?
Yeah, I mean, he's so deep into it. This is it's shameful. It's embarrassing, and it's happening at a time when the last thing we really need is interference with broadcast media. But really, this is so disgraceful. It's hard for me to remain calm. We've been covering this for a while. With the interference, the language, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. This is blatant interference with broadcast media, and it's we're going to have to watch it play out in court. I am glad to see the big, the mouse and all that. I'm seeing them all fight back on this because smaller broadcasters don't stand a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, Neo Caligula has done something I would have thought impossible in the past, which is he has me cheering for the mouse and its
exactly.
and its predatory legal department.
Yeah.
And an interesting fact isn't emphasized enough in this mix is that a fully staffed FCC board is supposed to have 5 people on it.
Yes.
It currently has 3.
Yeah. And right now there is they do have the quorum, but they're supposed to have 5, and you're supposed to have usually it kind of even you have it so that people can actually vote against each other. There is somebody, it's one of Brendan Carr's, I want to say one of his assistants. We reported on it last week, who's being proposed for this. And Anna Gomez, who I think I've mentioned, I did interview her. I've met her. She's the lone Democrat on there. Very intelligent, very principled woman. She's holding out, but again, she may be shoved out. It's really quite something. And that's actually some idea for maybe my doing a sideshow on I shouldn't say sideshow, though it's what it's turning into, but doing a special program kind of explaining how the FCC is organized, because it's kind of interesting.
One thing that ended up surprising me, and that's hard to do in my old age, is that when Carrie Lake got bounced from USAGM's periphery, I'm surprised that she wasn't hustled over to the FCC, given her limited broadcasting background was what got her attached to USAGM in the first place.
Sure.
Maybe she really wanted to go to Jamaica. I don't know, but that's that was a move that didn't happen that I was half expecting.
All right. Well, let's talk about another big giant broadcast medium with Cumulus here, as Gaines and Rose exit Cumulus's KFRU Columbia. As Cumulus Media continues its culling of local personalities at its stations across the country, the majority of those being let go served at music outlets, but there have been talk hosts also getting pink slipped, including KFRU, Columbia, Missouri talk hosts David Gaines and Simon Rose. Gaines posted to Facebook, as of this week, I'm no longer with Columbia's heritage radio station, KFRU. Corporate downsizing, the elimination of Cumulus Media positions nationwide hit our market this week. That's the nature of this business. Despite this setback, I'm writing this with a sense of gratitude. These past 18 years have been such a wonderful stretch of my career. I've worked with so many talented people. Rose's wife, Jenna, posted to Facebook, Simon Rose has come to the end of a legendary run in local radio. He weathered plenty of rounds of belt tightening over the years, but this time was the one he didn't survive. The hardest part for him isn't the ending itself. It's that he didn't get the chance to say a proper goodbye to the listeners on either station. He wants them to know how much being part of their lives has meant to him. They have been with him since before we were married and took daily interest in him and our growing family. I'm very familiar with Cumulus. They own stations across the country, and we actually competed with a Cumulus station or two back in the 90s. We were seeing the writing on the wall when it came to corporate radio and what its influence was going to be. And now it seems like I don't know if this is cost cutting or if this has anything to do with anything else. It sounds like a cost cutting measure to me. What's going on?
I want to say that Cumulus has been in and out of bankruptcy. It's going into another bankruptcy. I want to say it's been like 3 over the past decade or so. One of the things that needs to be kept in mind is that this latest reorganization is seeing an effort, and which may very well be approved, of Alden Global Capital coming in and buying some of that up. That's a private hedge fund that has been destroying newsrooms all over the country. They go into local newspapers and they gut their news departments because, of course, they're a hedge fund. It's not their role is making pure profit. They're not even a for-profit media company. They're not associated with the profession of media. So I think that that's something that people have to keep in mind here. One other thing I want to say, Simon Rose was one of the, at least at one of those stations, was one of their first. He was one of the founders. I think he was there for over 30 years. And while, as you know, we all know it's not that unusual for broadcast personalities to not be able to say goodbye because they don't want somebody running amok on the station. Usually when a person has been around that long, they know the person's a professional, they will let them say goodbye. That did not happen. I think that's incredibly cruel, not only for Simon Rose, but also for the listeners who have developed this. And we talk about the fact that so many areas have become news deserts. And here we have another live and local station that has lost trusted personalities at a time when things are somewhat chaotic in this country. And I want to point out that this is, partly due to this large corporate organization that is trying to operate locally. Radio doesn't scale that well. National, for big stuff, it really does well when it's small. And then when you have a disinterested hedge fund coming in, and there's going to be more and more cuts, this is what's going to happen. The writing's on the wall, and I really feel bad, not only for those who have lost their jobs, but also for the listeners in those areas that depend on these stations.
Definitely. So we're running a little bit on time, so let's go ahead and head over to our bottom feeders here. And this one in particular, is I want to say pretty shocking, but that would be very poor taste, which I'm not above, actually. But, in this case, I should be better than that. But the Orwellian company behind ICE's new electric shock gloves. This is some scary stuff. So in 2022, Assistant Chief Adam Gluck of the Cape Girardeau Police Department in southeastern Missouri purchased electric shock gloves for his officers after learning about them at a trade show. And his employees, he said, couldn't get enough of them. Probably sadists. If I tried to take away the gloves from those officers at this point, I think we may have a mutiny on our hands. Gluck joked on a podcast interview a couple of years later. They've grown really attached. Yeah, I'm glad you can joke about stuff like that. The shock gloves, he went on to explain, allow their wearer to inflict pain without leaving the sort of marks that could look bad to witnesses or leave an officer vulnerable to lawsuits. In today's society, everybody's filming everything. Everybody has a cell phone, Gluck said. If an officer punches someone on camera, that can go viral in an instant. Even a standard taser leaves puncture wounds, but the glove is low optic and it looks better on video and it looks better to those witnesses. With a glove, you can achieve all kinds of fascism. With a glove, there are no burn marks or scars. The gloves, manufactured by a company called Compliant Technologies, that doesn't sound dystopian, have been used by police, sheriffs, jail wardens, and even school resource officers for years. They've been described by groups like Amnesty International as readily misused for torture. And this week, ICE published a plan to order $20 million worth of the gloves right there. The device is called a glove. Wow, that's original. Which stands for Generated Low Output Voltage Emitter. It looks like a regular padded black utility glove, but when the wearer presses a small button on the glove's wrist, it produces a painful electric shock. There's the button right there. We have a saying, feeling is believing. Compliant Technology CEO Jeff Nicholas said in one 2022 YouTube video. In promotional clips, you can see people losing control of their limbs, falling to the ground and crying out in pain after a light touch from the glove. In 2022, the company called it a weapon in Instagram posts. Since then, though, it's downgraded the language to a conductive distraction and de-escalation device, branding the technology on its website as humane. Oh, is it really? Human rights organizations like Amnesty International have long raised concerns about electric shock devices like the glove, as well as other products that Compliant Technology sells, like electric shock belts and vests, which the company recommends for prisoner transport, courtroom use, and use on combative individuals during medical procedures like blood draws. Yay. The technology is unregulated despite the clear human rights risk associated with its use. Amnesty researchers wrote in a 2025 report detailing instances in which electric shock devices have been used for torture. The report ends with a recommendation that countries cease use of, decommission, and destroy any stockpiles of such prohibited electric shock weapons. So, but of course, the United States says, more, please. To which I respond, okay, carry a bucket of water with you. And when they turn those things on, sploosh. Oh, oopsie sauce. I bet that hurt. Although I don't know how that would work, but here we are.
Yeah, I was pretty dismayed when I found that story.
Yeah, it is. It's the mirror universe there, Chuck, from Star Trek, where, it's like, what do you, the main purpose isn't to control people. The main purpose is to get away with hurting people. It seems like that's what the, this assistant, police chief or whatever says, like, you can get away with shocking people with these gloves, better than you can with tasers. Wink.
I remember hearing years ago about one thing that cops would sometimes use. This was back when we had the old yellow pages, but phone books. They would hit people with phone books because they didn't leave marks.
Yeah.
And they just found ways of doing things that didn't leave marks. And when I read, it's so disturbing. And then for this police chief to be joking about and say, "Hey, I'd have a mutiny if these guys can't get enough of them."
These crazy psychos would kill me if I took away their torture devices.
So we gave them a badge and a gun too.
I know, right? And it's like, this is in what was it? That was in Missouri, too, and very, very red state. So if you live in Missouri and you're condoning this, shame on you for sure.
Oh, there were certain Chicago law enforcement employees past that would have loved to have had that. And in fact, an equally disturbing aspect of this is that it's inevitable that some of it will find its way into the secondary market.
Sure.
And end up being used for regular garden variety crime.
Yeah.
As well as government-sponsored torture. So, who knows? Maybe Perrier will become the next Molotov cocktail. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, you make a good point of that going into the private sector and criminals getting a hold of these things and using them for nefarious. Because that everything else, like whatever the cops have, a lot of times they'll end up in private hands too. What's to say these won't end up in their hands as well? No pun intended. Well, pun intended, maybe.
We sometimes forget that while there are plenty of law-abiding, upright, morally sound law enforcement officers, there are also dirty cops, ones that, even without being corrupt as we would define it, are prone to excess, and ex-cops. There are a lot of places that these devices can leak out to people that even fans of the gloves would concede are not desirable customers.
Coming to a govx.com near you, probably, because that's where all the other military and government stuff goes to. We always like to leave you on a high note instead of shocking hands. How about shocking prices for old-fashioned drinks? Not like drinks that are old-fashioned, but the actual old-fashioned. It's a 2026 price map. What an old-fashioned costs on average in all 50 U.S. states. So you have like there's an actual map here. Let me just get that to it. Ooh, that's a big old United States. So fashions in every state. Seems like if you're into that sort of drink there, if you're like, 90 years old, they're the states with the most expensive old fashions is Nevada. That makes sense with Vegas, Hawaii, New York, Vermont. Where's that Vermouth? And Utah. And the states with the least expensive old fashions: Wisconsin, Nebraska, Mississippi, Iowa, and Oklahoma.
And we need to keep in mind that a Wisconsin old fashioned, in some cases, is made with brandy. So it's a very different sort of a drink. In fact, even if you go to some northern Illinois restaurants that are push up against that border, if you order an old fashioned, you may be offered a brandy old fashioned.
Yes, and you may be offered a walker and a pair of Depends undergarments too.
Yeah, that too.
In Utah's case, I can see this as a supply and demand issue because
they have a lot of restrictions on alcohol service too. I don't know what it used to be. It used to be to buy liquor, you had to have a membership at the restaurant, and you had to pay for it. It was crazy, but yeah.
Yeah, so if you want your old fashioned, head up to Wisconsin, or if you're down south, go to Mississippi, and out west it's Iowa, Nebraska, and Oklahoma.
But I remember when mixed drinks were nowhere near that, and
Oh yeah, you go to a bar now, and those things are just like through the roof. That's why a lot of people do the old pregame at the house, right? Do. They get their drink on and get nice and lit at the house, and then they'll end up at the bar and have something to sip on for the rest of the night. That's how you have to do it in this economy, folks.
And it used to be in Las Vegas, the drinks were cheap, but after the mob broke down and they got the corporations came on in there, and then everything went sky high.
Yeah, well, Vegas did just go ahead, Bill.
The mob understood that getting you pasted was a loss leader. But corporations need ROI on absolutely every piece of the product chain.
Indeed.
Or Absolute itself, the alcohol. You see what I did there? Which you said absolutely, and I
saw what you did there.
No,
I'm sorry. You probably wish you were Stevie Wonder there. We didn't see it. No. That's fortunately for you guys. Well, you don't get to see me again today. So we're done. Bill, we appreciate you coming on. Do you have let me go ahead and get your website up here. Okay. And so tell us about your website, tilfordproductions.com.
That's actually more of a business site. If you're looking for my program specifically, there are 2 Facebook pages where you don't have to log into Facebook to see them. And one of them is from, it's okay to go to that site, Tilford Productions.
Can you access those Facebook sites from here?
There's a Facebook link at the bottom of it, yeah.
There's also, I'm putting them, they're also in the show note newsletter, the Substack, and I'm putting the link in there that will take everybody to what they need to get to.
Yeah, because my primary website does not carry program schedules. The Facebook pages do them.
Okay, so that's the business site, but that'll link you to the other sites as well.
Right. And yeah, what the website will do is show you the different recordings I've been involved with, which you might
Right on.
want to go out and enjoy as well. So
Cool. Anything else before we get out of here, Lainey? Any final thoughts?
Appreciate everybody showing up. We had some pretty lively discussion today, and we do love your comments. Whether you're pushing back or agreeing with us or want to add something else, we really do appreciate that. We also appreciate when you subscribe to our social media. The link tree, we've put the link in there. We've put underneath the video. And if you could subscribe to our YouTube channel, our actual YouTube channel, we'd super appreciate that as well. Thank you all so much for your support.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
It's always fun to be on with you. Thanks for the invite. And if you do one on Flock coming up, I'd love to have a little piece of that because it really is a hot button local issue here.
Actually, we're working on something, another project. I'll talk to you later about that, Bill. But yeah, absolutely, we'll figure that out because we want you to be part of that discussion.
Yeah, so we're on several outlets now. We're on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, Instagram Live. But you can catch our clips also on those sites as well as TikTok too, whenever they'll allow you to show some of the truth to people. So a lot of times they don't. But also in our descriptions down below, we have our mutual aid links to. If you can donate or share out the links, that would be great help to people in our community. And as always, I appreciate everybody that shows up live for these shows. If you're watching us later, we appreciate you as well. Otherwise, you'll see me again this Friday morning for Morning Extra and the Secret Show on Saturday night. Come out for that. Should be a good time most of the time. Bring your own, BYOB or BYOW if you're into the green stuff. Other than that, I guess we will see you later. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.